Are you ready to learn about the property market? Then you're in the right place. This is Everything Property by Pivotal Homes, where we connect Australia's best developers, agents, home buyer specialists, wealth creation experts, and property advisors to the people of Australia. Broadcasted from Whitehorse Studios on the Gold Coast. And now, here are your hosts, Hayden Ashton and Tom Egan.
G'day everybody, welcome to Everything Property by Pivotal Homes, where we connect Australia's best developers, agents, first home buyer specialists, wealth creation experts and property advisors to the people of Australia. Today's guest is one that we are really excited to have. He's going to share an absolute monster amount of knowledge with us. He is the CEO and founder of Real Estate Investment Finance, a multinational company with a mission to help Australians own and build wealth through property. He holds a bachelor's in commerce, majoring in finance, financial planning, and accounting, and is a fully licensed real estate agent, and accredited mortgage specialist. His company is positioned in the top 11 brokerages in Australia. He's won Independent Broker Office of the Year finalist, Business of the Decade finalist, Business Growth finalist, and Small Business Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. He holds a multi-million-dollar portfolio debt-free and has achieved financial freedom by the age of 30. And his company has furthermore just been nominated for another 14 national awards to be announced very soon. The man I'm speaking about is David Shahidi from Real Estate Investment Finance. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you very much, Hayden.
Tommy, how are you, mate? Good?
Good, buddy. Good.
Mate, we're really excited to have you on. First of all, thank you so much for coming in with... As I've just taken you through that intro, obviously a very reputable name in the industry and right across so many disciplines, whether it be finance, property, financial planning and accounting. So you're going to absolutely drop some fire on the show today. But first of all, what I want to get into is a little bit of background on yourself, how you came into the industry, property, finance and all that sort of stuff, but also learn about your personal story.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Hayden. Thanks for having me, boys. It started off, I was blessed from a young age to really know that my passion was, in helping other people get ahead financially. Mm-hmm. I was born and raised by a father who reached financial freedom by the age of 33. He's never worked a day since.
Right.
So just being brought up in that environment, it was always in the back of my head, going to school, seeing my friends' parents live week to week and struggle. I always thought there's a better way, and why are there a minority of people that do reach that freedom, and why is there a lot of people that don't ever get there? And I was curious around that from a very young age, 14, 15. I knew I wanted to, get into helping people get ahead financially.
You saw it. So you saw your dad do very well, but then you saw your friends who were struggling, and that sort of sparked that initial interest, and desire to want to help.
Yep, exactly. And what is the difference between someone that can do really well and those that don't? And how do we get more people to achieve that freedom, to live life on their own terms? So that inspired me. I knew from 15, 16, that's what I wanted to do. Went to uni, did my Bachelor in Commerce. I was very interested in the financial planning side of things, helping people with their finances. Then I quickly realised financial planning wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. Did my bachelor degree, finance, financial planning and accounting. Bought my first property while I was still at uni. That really helped set me up as well. Flipped that property within 18 months, made $80,000. And that led me to continue to build my property portfolio ever since. Then come age 25, I founded Real Estate Investment Finance just through my passion of wanting to reach as many people as we can across the country to help them build their property portfolios and achieve financial freedom.
And did you grow up in Queensland or?
Down in Melbourne.
Right,
so
okay.
Made the move over at 25.
Right.
But the weather down there, a bit inconsistent.
That's right.
Came up to Queensland for a holiday and I thought I could do this.
Yeah, you could do this.
Yeah, yep. So,
and so your first property you spoke about, where was that, mate? Melbourne? Or?
That was based down in Melbourne,
right.
in the eastern suburbs, in a suburb called Mooroolbark.
Okay.
So back then, property market was 320,000 would get you into the market. Brisbane still sort of has those opportunities. I'm not too far off it. I bought that just pre-GFC.
Right, okay.
GFC hit, and then we seen from there, that property still had really good growth and I sold it just post-GFC and we still flipped it for a profit as well.
Yeah, right.
So,
And so in Melbourne, that first property, was that something you did on your own accord? Or did you have your father's influence to try and help you and guide you? Or was there, things obviously being new to investing, everyone makes or often can make mistakes in their first purchase and sometimes it doesn't go as well as making 80 grand profit,
Yeah.
especially through like a GFC period where it's such a turbulent and changing and rapidly evolving market.
Definitely.
You know, is out of that would have taught you a lot of lessons in that first purchase.
Yeah, definitely. I was working 4 jobs while studying at uni, just to put together that first deposit to
Yep.
get into the market. And back then, that was about $30,000. There was a little bit of a first home buyer's grant
Yep.
as well, which helped. But yeah, Dad gave me some guidance and I guess encouragement. But I was very, very inspired to get in the market as soon as I could. I didn't even want to wait to get out of uni and to get my first full-time job, to the point where, you know, I was doing 70 hours of work a week, trying to get that deposit together, and got in as soon as I could, still with 1 year left of uni as well. So,
It's amazing the influence, like in terms of how I got into property was pretty much the opposite of your story. So I saw my dad make good income through his whole life, but never invested properly.
yes.
And so when he passed away, he literally passed away with nothing to his name because he wasn't putting that money into the appropriate assets or resources to be able to, you know, set up a nest egg for him in retirement.
Yeah.
Not that it mattered in the end,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, so it's amazing how those stories can affect us such a young age and not even knowing. Tom's very similar. You know, he grew up with nothing. In a very poor household, and you know, you can either sort of go one way or another, can't you? You can either, you know, we've even seen, you know, people that come from you know, families who have an idea of what they're doing, but I suppose they rest on their laurels and think it's going to be okay and not go out and make their own path like yourself.
Definitely. There's 2 categories. No matter where you come from, you can build that future.
Correct.
It's just about making that decision and getting the right help and taking that action.
And do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
Mate, so real estate investment finance, you know, I've got to say a little plug for yourself. You know, your team there is, you know, of finance brokers in Reece and
Yep.
and those guys that, you know, do an absolutely amazing job. And that really is the core of purchasing now, isn't it? The finance is such an important and pivotal part, pardon the pun, but a pivotal part of purchasing property.
Yes.
And so tell us about the finance side of things of the business first before we go into the property side.
Definitely. Like now more than ever, like you mentioned, Hayden, is the time you need to have the right broker on your team to help you navigate finance. Like finance is always a bit of a complex situation where you're trying to match the right clients to the right lender. But now with COVID hitting, these new grants, you need to really, really get that expert advice in knowing how you're positioned and how to get the finance through to be able to successfully purchase in the current environment.
And with like the market, it's amazing how much 2 or 3 weeks can change things. You know, 3 or 4 weeks ago there was not a lot of buyer activity. You know, just in terms, I suppose, more so of fear from people, whether whether their job was safe or whatnot. But on the back of some of the stimulus, and now we're starting to see, you know, the restrictions ease, albeit in Melbourne not going very well at the moment. But general confidence of people in the property market or even the share market, which we mentioned last week with another guest, Patrick McKinnon. You know, it's shown that Australia's economy is very, very strong. To cope with things like this. If you look around the world and see how other countries are navigating through such a turbulent, unprecedented time, Australia's, you know, we still got challenges to go through, and there's some challenges ahead in you know, multiple industries to overcome. But the property industry itself has shown again why it's Australia's number one asset class and why it's the Australian dream to own bricks and mortar.
Definitely. And if you look historically, Hayden, like if you look back on any GFC or any downturn we've ever had, property historically has held its ground, you know? And we've actually seen, you know, if anything, post any downturn, growth. You know, if you look back on 2008 and the recession, the GFC we had back then, property bounced back strong. You know, we saw anywhere between 2% and 35% growth in 2009 following the GFC. If you look back in 1991, which is the last recession Australia had, we saw huge growth post that. During the GFC or the recession, property's held its ground, you know, and it's in saying that there's always different markets that are going to do differently. Correct. You know, you got your high end market, you got your different suburbs that, you know, so every area is going to always perform differently. But the right property has held its ground, and if it's adjusted and dropped at all, it's always bounced back more. You know, and over the long term, it's been a performer.
Well, the latest figures just come out the other day, and I think Brisbane, whilst only small incremental increase in average price growth, it was sort of 1.5% through Brisbane Metro, considering what we've just gone through, and technically in a recession to have anything in the positive grounds, you know, pretty remarkable, really.
And that's affordability, isn't it? Like you look at the Brisbane property market where you get in from that 400 to 550 sort of price point and still be within that 30 minutes from the CBD. it's just so affordable that, where's prices going to go?
It's a no-brainer, and
Yeah.
you mentioned, I mentioned in the intro, multinational. So you're obviously helping people right across Australia.
Yes.
So you're servicing people's desires and wants right across the country. Now, it must make it very, very easy for your team based down in Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah.
When they're speaking to clients about potentially investing interstate somewhere like Queensland, and you're putting a comparison on the table, let's say Parramatta to Springfield, and you're saying, Parramatta 15, 20 years ago, and you've got Springfield, probably better infrastructure, better story, I suppose, and you're at 500,000. And they, in my experience, they tend just to get it. People from Sydney and Melbourne, because they've seen it happen, like Melton in Melbourne's west. I had a property under contract there probably 4 or 5 years ago, and that had a 2 in front of it. And now that same property's 500,000-600,000, and Melton's again 45 minutes directly west from Melbourne.
Yeah.
So your team down south must really be able to strike a chord, I suppose, with your purchasers who may be looking interstate.
Definitely. And Springfield's a great example of a great area that's, there's $85 billion of infrastructure being allocated to the area. They're only $15 billion in.
Massive.
So you have a look at that, over the next 10, 20 years, it's huge. But the numbers stack up from a rental perspective as well. You're comparing your Melbourne and Sydney market where your rental yields are around that 3%, where in Brisbane it's very, very common to get you 5% and upwards.
Makes it easier to hold, doesn't it?
It does, definitely, So,
and with, sorry?
No, you're right.
Oh, with finance, interest rates being, money's almost free, right? So it really is. If you can't relatively on an 80% LVR get yourself a positive cash flow property, you probably, you might be doing something slightly different or something slightly wrong.
You're not talking to Pivotal and you're not talking to REIA.
Well, I think if you base it on a 10% purchase, it nearly breaks even.
Yeah.
Like my property is about to be completed at the moment that I'm building in Springfield, and it's about positive $10 a week. And it just because of you're getting the quality, and not only that, there's I think over a 10-year period from now, they're looking at, I think there's 40,000 people that are living there now. In 10 years, there'll be 145,000.
Huge.
It's massive. It's one of the best areas that I personally brought. Hayden brought in Greenback next door to it.
Yep.
It's one of the best locations in Brisbane.
It makes sense. It ticks the boxes.
Yeah.
If you look at property fundamentals, and there's plenty of those areas across southeast Queensland, not singling those two out alone, but in terms of property fundamentals, infrastructure, population growth, we know that supply versus demand is property economics 101, right? Having those key infrastructure projects creates jobs, brings people in, which creates demand. And that's that's the property economics 101. Now you mentioned so you're 25, you started Reef. In that time, I went through earlier in the intro. There's a lot of awards here.
Yes.
What do you put it down to, mate? To be such a forefront, or on the forefront of the industry, and being nominated for so many of these awards. Is it anything you're doing different? Is it come down to passion? Is it your team, a mixture of everything? What do you put it down your success to today?
Being really, really clear on the purpose and making sure the team are also aligned as well has been a big part of it. You know, and we're very customer orientated in terms of making sure we're working to get the clients looked after and hold their hand through that whole process. But it's having a clear mission, having a clear purpose, and having a team aligned with our culture and our values. They drive the success of the business.
Well, I think a big difference for you guys as well is you specialise in property as well. When most of your clients that are coming to you with mortgages, you actually can give them advice on what the best strategy is. There's different ways to write the loan. There's different ways to look after that loan after that it's actually settled. And I think that's where you guys would give them that extra value and service after the loan's completed, where I don't think a lot of brokers themselves actually own property. And you guys can, I know one of my friends went to you guys, Johnny, and he's been able to get a lot more feedback and a lot more strategies around going to his second and third property where you guys can give him that advice on a finance perspective, and that's really helped him go to the next property a lot sooner than he expected.
Definitely. We're not transactional. We're very much lifelong. We're looking at the client situation in the long term. Where do they want to be in 5, 10, 20 years? What do we need to do today to get them set up so that they can actually be in a position to reach those end goals as well?
And it's the small 1% things that you can change on the loan, or put a strategy in place with offset accounts, or leveraging against different properties to pay one off quicker. There's those little 1%ers which actually make the difference over that 30 years.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the things you just mentioned there, which really resonates, is that long-term vision. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the industry who almost operate on a churn and burn type model. They get you in, you sold your property, and then that's it. There's no follow-up. There's no I suppose action after that, and holding them responsible for doing what we planned we were going to do in that initial strategy session or whatever. So
Definitely.
ensuring that it sounds like you guys do that, ensuring that you're holding their hand right through, not year 1, year 2, but year 5, 10, 15, 20 to make sure that they're like yourself at the age of 30 or 40, they're completely financially free and they're not dependent on anything.
Exactly. Our business relies on repeat clients and referrals, and it's that long-term game in terms of being able to work with them and help them, to be able to keep them as long life.
And then normally the clients that actually come and purchase through the times like these is the referral-based business or the successful ones that have set up those foundations with a portfolio that actually can take advantage of. There's good deals out there at the moment.
Definitely.
And then that's when it really helps your business in these times.
Definitely.
Trust is a big word, isn't it?
Exactly. Huge. Yep.
Mate, so we've got the finance. So I mentioned here, you've got diplomas right across multiple industries: finance, financial planning, accounting, and real estate. Now that, from a client's perspective, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at potential people to try and assist me do what I need to do.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you don't practice in accounting or financial planning with Reef, but what I think it does, it gives you the opportunity to just provide some feedback, and they know that you understand it. So you might not be necessarily the person to help them with their shares or with their financial planning or insurances or whatever, but you've got that knowledge base there to at least point them in the right direction with accredited professionals or someone who can assist in that field.
Spot on. And, as a business owner delivering services in this industry, every client needs that team around them. They need the right property person. They need the right finance person. They need the right solicitor, the right accountant, the right financial planner. And someone that can take that holistic, view of the client situation and point him in the right direction.
Very, very important.
And I think explaining it is the big thing, so they actually understand what they're going through and what the steps are to follow, because that's only going to make them, I guess, more focused on their goals and targets because they actually understand what they're going to do.
Definitely.
With that team.
Mate, let's talk about property, because that's what we love. I mean, the finance stuff goes over my head. I know.
We need the finance to get the property, but
no, absolutely.
But,
without settling, it's over.
You always don't pay the bills, as they say, right? Hey, so you guys, as I mentioned, multinationals. So whilst Queensland is where Tom and I specialise in, and we're not afraid to open this up the discussion, but across Australia, obviously working with multiple professionals or research houses or builders, developers and whatnot right across Australia. Is there is Queensland the market at the moment that because you're right across Australia's property market, whereas we're sort of a little bit more in a bubble here and focusing just on Queensland? Do you see Queensland as the best value right now, or is there other places in Australia that you're potentially recommending to your clients, or does it come back to, again, that strategy session and working out what it is they want to achieve?
Yeah, it definitely comes back to the strategy session, looking at what they want to achieve. Brisbane's definitely on our top list of places to invest, but when you're building the portfolio, of course, as well, you want to diversify and not have all your eggs in one basket. So being able to diversify our clients into different markets so they can see, long-term uplift is important as well. But Brisbane right now is definitely on the top of our radar. It just makes sense for all the reasons you mentioned earlier as well. There's so much infrastructure taking place here. The population growth is happening, We're seeing huge demand, with demands exceeding supply in a lot of locations as well. And prices, it just makes sense to be able to see that growth. The yields are fantastic. The properties pay for themselves, like what you mentioned, Tom, earlier, where, costing you $10 a week, but in situations, putting $10 a week in your pocket. It's just, that's very common. That's our market here, where it's not going to cost you anything and the growth potential's there. So it's definitely a no-brainer. And Brisbane is our go-to place. I'd say second to that, there's good opportunities down in the Newcastle market still. And it's more your clients that have that higher budget that want to do development. So you've got your duplex strategy where we can, be able to subdivide and see that instant equity, and you still get good yields down there. So it's another one of our preferred areas. But again, the price point to get into that market is around that 700,000-800,000 plus. So it's not suited for everybody. And there's opportunities regional Victoria as well. When you look at like your Bendigo, your Ballarat, where you can still get in on an affordable price point and still see decent yields with a lot of potential for growth too.
What about Geelong?
Yeah, Geelong had a lot of growth as
Yeah.
well, but there's still a good market there. There's still good opportunities.
Yeah.
2 years ago, Geelong was definitely a hotter spot.
Yeah.
We have seen good growth in the last couple of years, but there's still potential there as well. Definitely. Yeah.
Melbourne's just gone ballistic, hasn't it? Up until, or it's still going, it's still pushing forward. But I was telling a story last week again, and covering old ground, but I was in a place called Wollert, and we're doing a little bit of a stock tour at a previous company I was at, just looking at land options around the area. You'd be familiar with Wollert.
Yeah.
So 3, 4, or probably 5 years ago now, that was literally paddock, like farm area. And so with this builder / developer, and he's like, we're going this place. It's really, really awesome. There's so much going in there. And as we're getting, that's probably 20 Ks north of the CBD, maybe 25 Ks north of Melbourne CBD.
Yep.
And I'm like, God, it feels like we're going out of town a long way here, but it's so flat in Melbourne. It's endless. It's like, it's just completely flat. So you get about 20 Ks out of the CBD and it becomes rural almost very, very quickly, especially to the north. And they pull up outside this paddock and I'm like, what's going on here? And that's the estate there.
Yeah.
There's a sales office. Land gets released tomorrow. And I'm looking back, and there's probably hundreds of people in a line with tents, camping chairs, just sitting there waiting to get. And there's literally, mind you, there's still cows grazing in the paddock behind the sales office. Like that. That was how crazy it was.
It was on the news.
It was
Just Melbourne for you. Hey?
unbelievable. And we're starting to. The reason I bring that up is because on the back of the home builder stimulus, we're starting to see, not to that extent, but we're starting to see similar things happen here in Queensland, where land is so tightly being held now or secured by first home buyers or homeowners entering the market, where we're starting to see the likes of your stock lands and your land leases start to hold ballots, whereby you can't just walk in and pick lot one. You've got to put your name in a hat essentially, and there's 3 other people in that hat and you might get chosen.
I think they're assessing the strongest applicant as well. Put down your EOI, how much deposit income, so they can actually then have a choice of what applicant am I going to take for this block? What's the highest chance of it settling? And that's how they're doing it now. Put your expressions of interest in,
and first in, or best quality gets it, which makes sense, doesn't it?
It makes sense. I had a request come through yesterday for a client. I contacted a developer, and the developer basically said to me, look, even to hold a block of land or put an EOI down, I could sell these blocks 3 times over. What I actually require is a pre-approval before I even prepare a contract.
Let's go there as well on that.
Because I think it's the most important, but how he's doing it now, because he goes, I can basically sell, I've got 25 lots left.
Yeah.
I can hold all of them or put EOIs down, but I'm only putting EOIs down on pre-approval, which is something we brought up that I mentioned probably 3 weeks ago with developers changing their terms, because you still have to allow purchasers to put deposits down, etc. But we just need that EOI process, changed a little bit with the pre-approval to qualify that buyer, because the last thing you want is a qualified buyer missing out. So
exactly, and the pre-approval, it's an education process, I guess, with developers as well. That the clients definitely need to go through finance and be pre-qualified. We need to know that there's potential there to get the finance. But to see a lender pre-approval as well, it's not what we do. We don't want to go to the bank and get them to look at a client's position and situation and give us a letter saying they're pre-approved, because chances are we may not go to that particular lender to get the finance.
And that's where it's a broker's pre-approval letter that I always say, or an eligibility letter that they require, because that's enough proof. Okay, the brokers assess their documents, pay slips, credit checks, everything's been done. Yeah. But for us in property, knowing, and especially you for finance, that bank might not be the best option for the client, depending on a lot of variables.
Spot on.
It's just assessing you as a broker. Okay, perfect. That should be enough.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as developers understand that, because some of them may insist. Have you found or not?
I found one. They wanted a pre-approval, and that client was already down the track with ANZ.
Yeah.
But then push comes to shove, they want a pre-approval with ANZ. But as you're probably aware right now, like you're looking at 40 days, I think it is for a turnaround or a decision before they even request, maybe an outstanding doc or whatever. So, they make you jump through the hoops for your pre-approval. But as you mentioned, that bank may not be the best bank because of turnaround timeframes, or developers notoriously aren't very patient people. Yeah. So that you're not going to wait 40 days just to get them to ask for. They want a bit more information. Then you're another 40 days. So realistically, post Royal Commission, the banks are so over the top with every little bit of information from what finance brokers have shared with me, and you've probably got to deal with 2 or 3 requests for information. So you're at almost 3 months before or 4 months before you even getting close to an approval.
So it's so important to go to the right lender in that situation, because that could mean that client loses out on that opportunity versus getting it because the bank's taking too long to pick up the file. And in the current market heating up the way it is at the moment, that means they miss out on that property as opposed to going to a lender that's going to pick it up much quicker and being able to secure it.
Yeah, and some pre-approvals I see from different banks are different. They all have different, subject to what, can be subject to so many things. Each bank requires that. So that doesn't mean that client is as qualified just based on one bank's pre-approval either. I think a broker assessing it, knowing different lending options, we have to be flexible, have 2 or 3 options and at any moment that bank's policy can change. So I think having a broker, having multiple options for that client is the best outcome for them as well and for the developer.
Definitely. And then valuations, we don't know.
Yeah.
The banks are just all over the place. We're seeing, one bank wants to value something, 50 grand short, and the next will come in at contract price. So
or over,
by going to a pre-approval situation, the valuation doesn't happen to stack up because the valuer woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Well, back to square one.
They've only got one side of the bed.
And, it means a credit hit on the client's file and a whole other journey the client needs to go down.
That's right. I'm sorry, mate. It's not pivotal.
But it's reality, Everyone's got a different opinion in how they're going to, calculate it. And it just means that at the end of the day, we need to do that up front to know that we're going to go to the lender that's going to come to the party prior to getting a pre-approval. So it's an education process as well with the developers on that.
It's hard because if you're speaking directly to clients or, I guess for our business in B2C, so many people would say, go get the pre-approval. But for, the experienced guys on our side, we don't want you to get the pre-approval. We want you to actually go to a broker and get assessed properly from a broker's point of view. Yeah. And don't go to a bank because most of the time, I reckon 95% of the time, we don't go with the bank that's given them a pre-approval either.
Exactly.
There's so many moving parts.
So much.
So many moving parts.
Definitely.
Mate, you touched on a key word there. The word was duplex in Newcastle. Now, for those people who may not understand what that is, so for me, I classify duplexes as a single, for in the construction side of things when we're looking at a new package. We build it as one with the opportunity or the option to subdivide that and then have 2 different titles, 2 different properties at the end of it. Now, that's a different strategy to your standard house and land, and you mentioned equity uplift, which is whereby you may purchase it for 700, split it, some associated council costs and whatnot, and then maybe realise a capital growth on the other end of it, so a profit. Now that's a short term, well, not necessarily, but that can be a short term strategy to roll them and go to your next one, How do the banks look at that in terms of finance? And then can you incorporate your council associated subdivision costs into the finance application? And how do they take into consideration that as an exit strategy for short term finance and then breaking fees and all that sort of stuff?
So most of the stuff we do is buy and hold.
Okay.
If the clients decide to then flip it at the end, that's up to them. But we always will go in with the intention of a buy and hold strategy. There's other implications from a tax perspective if you do buy with the intention to sell, where it can attract GST. So it's always good to buy with the intention to hold. If things change, they change. But the banks will lend on strata fees, on being able to strata title them at the end, as long as the builder includes that cost up front.
Okay.
So when we're doing valuations on that, we're putting the land contract, the build contract, which includes all of the cost to be able to subdivide that at the end. And the builders definitely assist with that whole process. Some don't, some do, but it's just making sure
incorporating it's
we work with those that do.
And that's important when you're saying incorporating fees, because as a builder point of view, we often hear horror stories of clients getting caught out by not really understanding what is included and what's not, especially when you get into more complex structures like your duplexes and whatnot, whereby there's things outside the normal. It's not as simple as floor coverings. There's other council fees and that included, and that's why I think the message for people there that may be watching is get on to a team like someone like Real Estate Investment Finance or Reef or David or any one of his team, because having a builder that you can rely on and trust is so important. And relying on a Google search to make a decision that arguably is probably one of the most important of your life. You can get caught out, and you would have seen horror stories from a finance perspective too, where you're not involved in the real estate transaction. You would see people who would come just on a finance basis, and then you're trying to massage all this shit and all these fuck ups through. You're like, shit, what am I? You've done yourself a mischief here, and you've got to try and workshop out of it, I suppose.
Definitely.
And that's where you'd use a lot of the same builders a lot of the time where they're proven.
Yep.
I know when me and Hayden were selling, we'd trial different builders, and That's unfortunately what you discover.
You're back to Pivotal and you realise that that's where you should be.
That's right. I'll never let him live it down. Tell you what. Mate, on here in the little intro I did, it's a little bit unknown, but 14 other national awards to be announced soon. Can you tell us anything about those?
We've been nominated for, our whole team's been nominated as just providing exceptional service. So from our client services manager, Georgia, to our loan processor. So there's a whole bunch of different nominations that we've been recognised, our brokers individually. We've got our most recent broker. He's got 2 years industry, so he's been nominated for Rising Star Award, which is recognising the brokers under 35 that's new to the industry, that's excelling. And, if you look at the results he's achieved over the last 2 years working with REIF, it's been huge, So he's definitely going to, have a good running in for that. So the boys are doing such a good job. They're being recognised, our admin and support staff as well, and us as a business as a whole, as office, of the year and the likes of that.
I mentioned quickly, because I mentioned Reese before on your team. I did leave out Duncan, so I'll give Duncan a rap too. He's also very, very well. But you said there your support team, and I think, as salespeople, even Tom and I, at the forefront, we get a lot of the accolades and a lot of the praise, and you're doing such a good job and whatnot. But it really comes back to the people behind us as individuals who are maybe on the forefront and pushing things out. On social media or whatever, it often looks like it's off our back, but it's the incredible work that our team do, and obviously your team as well, that enable that success.
100%. If it wasn't for our team, we wouldn't be who we are, and they are everything. So.
It allows us to get on with it and do what we do.
That's it.
Mate, on a personal note, I know that obviously personally, we've had the pleasure of being friends as well, but I want to talk about personal development, and I know it's something you invest in heavily, and share with us what you're doing on that front, with Kerwin Rae and all that sort of stuff, and how that impacts you, and some of the change that's been enabled you to achieve or success.
Definitely. So rewind, back 3-4 years ago, starting the business, getting my hands dirty and growing it and doing what I love. I was probably of the opinion that I knew what I was doing and I had this, and then I went along to a seminar and we know what we know. We know what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. And what we don't know, there's a lot of shit we don't know.
Say that again 3 times quick. What is it? We know what we know.
Yeah.
We know what we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know.
That's it.
And then what was the last one?
That's it.
Oh, that's it.
There's only 3.
There's so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
And we might not realise that, So personal development's been huge for me. I went along to that seminar with Kerwin, for example, and there was a lot that I took out of it that I didn't know that I didn't know. And that embarked me on a journey of, working on myself and personal development and leadership. And by being able to do that, what I could bring back to the business and the team, I would put that down to our success and growth over the last 3 to 5 years. The more I work on myself and the better that I become, the more I can empower my team, and the more I can focus on growing the business as well and having more success in helping people. So there's been a massive link to that. So I'm a bit of a personal development junkie now. I've got my hit and it's working, so you keep doing it. But it's been life-changing, It's helped us grow the business to what it is today as well. And,
And now you're in that Kerwin Rae leadership group, right? So you're part of was it the K2 or Elite or?
Yeah.
So you're even in the inner circle, I suppose, and crew the events and whatnot as well.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. So when you enter into K2, you get in foundations, then as you're there and you're giving back to the community and helping, as you grow, it becomes a natural, consequence to want to help other people as well. So it's an opportunity there to work with Kerwin and supporting the rest of the new business owners that do come in as well. So I'm in senior leadership there now, been with Kerwin for the last 3 years.
Yep.
And couldn't see my life without it. It's just been brilliant.
And I think that's it's really interesting because I see you interact quite a lot with a gentleman that's also in the group there that would be seen as one of your competitors.
Yeah.
And quite often, we're quick to look at a competitor and sort of, try and distance yourself because you don't want to get too close. But what I find really interesting is you're in there workshopping together how you guys can you're in the same field, in the same business, but you guys have that desire to both succeed opposed to wanting to put that person down or make them not as successful. So the hope that you're better, and that just not a culture that exists obviously within that group.
Great point. Like it's such an abundant world. There's so many opportunities. You know, we don't have the mentality, I guess, of you're my competitor. Even though you are, let's help each other. There's enough opportunities out there for everyone to be abundant and successful and achieve success. So the whole mentality of, you know, I'm in it for myself. I've found that giving back and being open and working together actually helps everyone grow.
And each business specialises in different things. Like I know for me and Hayden, we've got other builders that we're friends with that we've sold before in the past, and we don't specialise in some of the work. It could be sloping, it could be different styles of homes, and we pass it on to our friends that
We
are
still call them and say, look, man, I've got a deal for you. You know?
Here's a deal. You need to look after this client, and I know that client's going to be looked after as well, which is the most important part.
Definitely.
And I don't want anything from it. I just want the client to have a good outcome.
Yeah.
And that's where unfortunately, there is competition, but we do specialise in different things and different strategies. Okay, my strategy is not going to suit you the best. You need to go over, and we do that a lot. There's probably 3 other guys that that I've known for a long time, and always refer them business, and they refer business to us too.
That's it. And there's opportunity to collaborate, you know, no matter what. So,
Mate, obviously we've just come through, or not, sorry, I keep saying it, but we're going through COVID-19 and such an unprecedented time. Pre-COVID-19, things were really, really, really buoyant, weren't they? Like everyone was talking about 2020 year of plenty. Things were just, I mean, for us, we did, I don't know what we did actually, but 28 or 30 sales in February. For February, traditionally, it's quite slow coming on the back of Christmas, and things normally warm up in March.
I think we did 6 in 2019 in February.
Yeah.
And then in 2020 February, we did like 32 contracts.
Wow.
So that shows you a difference in what 12 months can do.
Yeah, and that was obviously February 2019 was pre-election between Shorten and ScoMo, and on the back of the Royal Commission. So there's a heap of distractions back then.
hats off to you guys, by the way.
Oh, thanks,
That's huge growth.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That's down to your hard work, your strategies, and what you boys have.
And like you said, it's the team.
Yeah.
Like we have an awesome team. It takes time to build that team, we've learned.
Yeah.
And, me and Hayden are big on the personal development and the Co and Ray, and he's awesome, but it's a huge amount comes down to finding the actual right team, because me and Hayden can only do so much.
Yeah.
And being so young, Hayden's 25, I'm 28, it's a lot of the time we're recruiting, and now when we look at our team, I don't think anyone's over 30. in a business of 20 people, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 people.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just that it's a lot of the time people look at, and you would have experienced it being successful young.
Yeah.
You try and bring people into your team who are older, and unfortunately there's that mindset like, I know more than you because I'm older, I've been around longer, and that's probably one of the big challenges often that you overcome as someone running a team at a young age, is you coming up against those personalities.
Definitely, and there's a lot of ego there as well.
Correct.
So, and it's about alignment. I guess age is not the factor, but it's about people that are aligned with the vision, the mission, the values, and you guys.
Attitude,
exactly.
Attitude's so big.
That's ego right there, and when they think they know everything.
Yeah.
We're all learning. Things change, and it's just having that attitude of wanting.
And we want to learn off the guys that are older than us, because they have techniques and things that we haven't seen before. That experience is what gets us through. I guess the owner of our company, we lean on him on times like this, and we're learning so much because it's just all experienced him. He's seen this 3 or 4 times. He's never seen COVID, but he's seen where the market conditions rapidly change, and we don't know where we're going, and then we just lean on him. Where's this going to happen? And it's just me and Hayden been sitting down writing down as much as we can as the experience keeps unfolding, because we're learning. So it's really good to have the right person with the experience as well.
Yep.
But unfortunately, it's hard for us as a sales team. Like Hayden mentioned, it's good with older experienced guys, but sometimes it's hard with that ego.
Yeah.
Trying to scale that business if you are younger than them. It's a challenge.
Yep, definitely.
So, mate, what I was alluding to there, so we've gone through COVID-19, very, very buoyant pre-COVID-19. How has the finance landscape changed? Because obviously we saw a lot of people lose their jobs. Are banks being extra cautious, extra, I suppose, inquisitive about clients when you're doing your finance application? Are they asking more questions? Are they wanting, letters from employees to confirm employment or reduction of hours? And what are you seeing there? Are banks taking extra precautions?
Definitely. They're definitely taking extra precautions, but every lender's got a different approach, like anything. So, again, it's matching the right person to the right solution there. But it's a bit of a common sense approach overall. It does get a little bit more complex to it. But pretty much if the person's income has been impacted, their hours have been reduced, they're on JobKeeper, it needs to be assessed. Obviously, We have seen lenders pull back in commission and overtime income during COVID, where they would have allowed it, but they won't allow us to use that.
Right.
But outside of that, then there's going to be different policy changes, based upon different lenders. It's a general. Have you been impacted by COVID? Has to be asked every time.
Yep.
And if you haven't, all good, business as usual.
So that's a question they make you. Okay, yep, right.
There's definitely a few more boxes to tick there. And sometimes they may or may not want to check into that. They'll ring the employer, do some verifications just to make sure that they haven't been. So it is a common sense approach in that if your income has been impacted, we're going to base it on your newly impacted income. But it is definitely verifying that and what that looks like as to, whether they can proceed with finance. And if it's all good, then it's business as usual.
And are they asking more relevant questions? For example, if they see a finance application come through and it's, I think I saw something about business owners or small business owners, there was more hoops or an LVR change to go through on that side, or if it may be in tourism or in hospitality, are they maybe being a little bit more inquisitive I suppose, on some of that stuff?
Definitely, yeah. So you're self-employed, there's definitely more, has your business been impacted by COVID? And show us that it hasn't.
Okay.
Show us your bank statements, show us your BAS for the most recent quarter. We want to see that your turnover is consistent with your most previous year's financials that you're using. So then there's, different sectors, I guess, are getting more scrutiny, like your hospitality and your tourism sectors. And some lenders have just said, we're just not going to lend if you are in those industries.
Right.
Others are okay to just take a general common sense approach to go, you told us you're earning $100,000 a year. Have you been impacted by COVID? Are you still earning on track to earn that 100? Show us. Cool. All good. Let's move forward.
And for deals and clients that have achieved formal approval and they go unconditional, is banks still checking clients' applications or pay slips or contacting their work prior to settlement, leading up to settlement date? Because I know that we had some clients who were getting contacted 48 hours before settlement. If anything's changed, the banks may even pull settlement after issuing formal.
There was a massive scare around that. But what we have found, that even if their situations had changed, we have found that the lenders have had an appetite to help and support. They're not going to let someone lose their 10% deposit and not settle because they've been impacted by COVID. They've been really, really good in terms of being able to support and assist with that. But in saying that, they've still done the checks. So there has been a scare. There has been a bit of a scare. Are they going to come to the party? Are they not? But we have found that even if there has been a change, they've come to the party. There was a scare just as COVID hit where we had self-employed, clients that applied for finance, gone unconditional. Day before settlement, the bank checked their Facebook business page.
Oh, right.
And it says closed.
Oh,
you're joking.
And
so that's the length they're going to.
Right, they'll check.
On social
they're
media.
on your Facebook.
Yeah, right.
And if you say you're single and you got a woman on your side, they're onto it now.
Like your ex-mate.
So in that situation, it was a bit of a
on Facebook account.
we didn't know what to expect there. Like, it was a bit of a scare in terms of they've questioned that the business is closed and what's happening. But it turned out that business actually, just the shop front was closed.
Yeah.
They were still operating. They'd pivoted. They'd gone online. Business was as usual. Things went smoothly there. But they're checking.
It shows
they're
the degree.
watching. Big Brother's watching.
And that's the pivoting in terms of businesses has been one of the really good takeaways from this. I mean, for us, for yourselves, it's been amazing to see some of the businesses transform or quickly pivot to being able to work either remotely or change their model slightly to try and get through this period. And that would be, some of the stuff that Kerwin, was speaking about when this whole first thing came out, was being able to pivot. We saw, companies go from making beer to hand sanitizer and all that sort of stuff. And that's been some of the ingenuity that's come out of this. And I think it's going to change the landscape dramatically from an employer's perspective. Working from home's always been a little, for me anyway, I've always looked at it as a bit of a wank, you're not going to be doing your full 8 hours if you're at home. But I think through this, what it's shown us is that it is productive to work from home on some sort of level. There's obviously, instances where you need to be belly to belly and you need to get that interaction on a face-to-face type scenario. But, even from us, from a design perspective, when we're looking at things, we're trying now to incorporate more sort of home office study areas because we really feel like that this has set almost a little bit of a precedent where we're going to start to see working from home probably become a lot more popular and a lot more acceptable, given that businesses have had no choice through this period, but have also seen a level of success, I suppose. And with the likes of your Zooms, technology and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't make it hard, does it?
I keep hearing the feedback that it's more productive since the Zoom meetings and the less driving time and Yeah.
How do you
I've
find
heard
it with
more
your team? Because you
benefits out
guys
of
would
it.
have had to shut down for a while.
Yeah, we shut down. Everyone worked remotely from home. And look, we found that productivity was still there. Different feedback from different people. But we found it was, business as usual. We just all plugged away. We knew we had to do what we had to do. Zoom was, we huddle every morning as a team at 10:30. We talk about, how we're tracking, what our goals are for the day, any bottlenecks, and we kept that going on the huddle, on Zoom, online, and, phone, Zoom, we can still continue. Things went well. But the culture in the office is another thing as well.
I love being in the office and taking the piss out of him.
So we missed that. So, but look, I agree. Like, I think the way of the future, I think we're going to see a lot of businesses go, well, hang on, do we need the office?
Yeah.
Do we need the $100,000 a year in rent that, that we're potentially paying? Can we work remotely? Can we have that lifestyle? More people, more workers want to have that flexibility as well to be able to work from anywhere. And, so I think we will see more of that. And with the housing as an investment as well, looking at housing that's going to support more of that work from home scenario, I think we'll be more of a performer moving forward as well. So that's brilliant that you guys are looking at that.
And that's interesting because the commercial side of things, upon thinking about that, the commercial property side of things may face some challenges moving forward, because if you've got these people again who have had no choice but to buy online, it's introduced so many consumers to a different way of purchasing, which I would imagine would have been already on a knife's edge in terms of online sales versus retail stores.
Yeah.
So having more consumers, I suppose, go down that path of online shopping. Is going to make that a really interesting discussion whether commercial shop fronts are actually tenable, whether they become a necessity of conducting business, and that's going to be a really interesting phase for the commercial property market moving forward.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think we're up for some interesting times. I think we will see vacancies definitely increase in that space, and I think we'll see potential cheaper buying opportunities, you could say, as well. But then there's the whole, what's the future going to look like for that space? Are you going to get a tenant?
Yeah, what's that? Because the infrastructure's in place. They've got these huge shopping centres, and they're not going to stay vacant forever. But what's the repurpose? Maybe because you already start to look at the likes of your big department stores, Myer and David Jones. Those guys are struggling pre-COVID, because of the rise of online shopping brands and whatnot. And so I know my partner, she does all of her shopping online because it's easier. You finish work at 5 o'clock, last thing you want to do is drag yourself down to Pac Fair with every man and his dog to try and find a dress or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I know anything about that.
Are you
probably
sure?
just like dress.
And look, it was always coming. The trends are we're heading in that direction. So COVID might have just made everyone think, why not now? And brought that forward. Yeah.
And the online shopping is very competitive because it comes down ultimately, if you can find the same brand on 3 different stores, it's going to come down to price. Who gets a sale?
Yeah.
We were talking to a guy that we buy our tackle from, and he said the biggest problem that he's got is he can provide the best service and knowledge to all of his customers, but the biggest problem is when it comes to the online shopping, it all just comes down to price.
Yeah.
And that's where the unfortunate part for him is him going online, but unfortunately not always winning that business as well. So it's interesting how you can also provide service online in a different way,
definitely,
to retain those clients.
Definitely, and there's less cost as well selling online, isn't there? So you can be more competitive, how do you then have your point of difference? So people come to you, and it's not just about price.
Online, that's right.
Yeah.
What's
that's
that
where that value
saying,
comes
price
in.
is forgotten long after service or quality or whatever it is. Like I know for me, I'd rather pay a little bit more. Like prime example is, where we go get our fishing stuff from.
Yeah.
I know that I go there, I know I'm going to pay 10, 15% more, but I know that I'm going to get someone who knows their shit, and they're going to talk to me about how am I going to catch, Not that I've catched many, but if I ever do,
it's all branding, isn't it? You know what I mean? So you want to pay that extra amount because that person's the go-to person, and doesn't become about price.
We purchased our boat the cheapest that we could find anywhere. We were going to buy locally, and I think the price was an extra $10,000 to buy locally, but we decided to buy in Brisbane. We got it $10,000 cheaper for the identical boat.
Yeah.
But the service is just horrendous. They're always shut. The work they've done on the boat's not correct. We keep finding all these flaws.
One broken leg later.
And a broken leg later. But I would prefer any time of the week that we would have just paid the extra $10,000. We've probably already spent the $10,000 extra just by getting it to where it needed to be.
Exactly.
But every time, 99% of the time, we're always happy to spend more money with more value every day of the week.
Mate, are we looking at the perfect storm, in terms of Queensland property right now?
It's I reckon we're seeing huge demand with these home builders. We're seeing buyers galore. Like developers talking about 150 people lining up on a Saturday in Brisbane, like we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
You know, that's huge. And with all the factors and fundamentals there, and the affordability and the current demand, you know, it's perfect. Like, yeah, I can't see Brisbane not being a performer in the next, you know, several years.
Supply is really interesting because, you know, it was quite a buoyant market pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, and what we saw was a lot of developers just pull back. You know, if they had future status, they're like, all right, let's, you know, we'll stop that. We'll just, you know, we'll really, really slow this out and make sure we don't overextend and put more lots on the ground than we can sell and whatnot. So that's caused a lack of supply. And then we've had this bull rush. You know, there's been 20-odd thousand people apply for the home builder already in the last month alone. So we've had an absolute influx, you know, of purchases. And that land supply that was there pre-COVID is not there anymore. So, like, a lot of your big developers have pulled back stages.
Now they're bringing them forward.
But it's not going to be quick enough.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at like a massive lack of supply.
Yeah.
A huge influx of demand out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It really is. And we're looking at price point and people getting the market. What it's really going to do, I think, is owner occupiers, as we know, is so important to you know, if you're an investor, you want to be around as many owner occupiers as possible.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at these estates that have just been bombarded with owner occupiers. It's going to do amazing things for estates. It's also going to balance out estates that maybe were a little bit reliant on the investment sales and were probably a little bit more weighed in investment to owner occupier ratio.
Yep.
So it's going to balance those out and bring a nice medium and bring a lot of, you know, more, because as we know, owner occupiers tend to spend maybe a little bit more on their facades or spend a little bit more you know, on their, you know, gardens or landscaping, or just generally look after the properties better. So it's really going to bring up the aesthetic of the estates quite considerably.
Agree. It's huge.
And I think, I really think we're on, you know, I think we're going to have challenges over the next 3 to 6 months, more so in finding land than finding buyers.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think 2021 is going to be a really, really strong year for investors to take some of those opportunities that maybe first home buyers fell over on or whatnot.
Yep.
Pick up some good deals, and there's going to be a lack of you know, supply and some really good opportunities. But what I also see as a potential issue is, because what I noticed was during COVID, banks brought out some of these cash incentives and like ANZ, for instance, and then these buyers to try and stimulate, you know, loans and whatnot or refinances during, you know, a slow period. And then all these buyers have come out of the woodwork and they don't have the support or the team there to actually handle the volume.
Yeah.
Are you seeing there's a slow turnaround? Is it bank specific? You know, do you think that banks, you know, are generally slow across the board in their pickup times, and do you see that improving?
Yes, yes and no, but some are.
Yeah.
So it's so important to know where to go in terms of what the pickup times are.
Yeah.
What we saw as soon as COVID hit was the banks weren't ready for COVID. Probably like, you know, the majority of people. No one knew. But they had their teams all offshore. You know, well, some of them did. And as soon as they got shut down, they didn't have a backup plan. So all of a sudden, the banks that were local handled it better. The ones that had offshore team didn't have a backup plan, found themselves in the shit where they had to work out what they're going to do. So we saw some lenders blow out to 35, 40 days in that time, and that was just based upon them not having the contingencies in place, you know, to handle what had taken place. And then we found that, you know, the refinance opportunities, the banks that came out with the cashbacks and that sort of thing to get that business in the door couldn't handle the volume of business that it delivered either. So then that blew pickup times as well. We've got lenders now that are picking up files within 4 hours. We're submitting a deal and it can get approved tomorrow. So if it's a nice clean and it's good to go. So, and we're seeing other lenders such as ANZ now and this Westpac still, that's sitting at between that 35 and 40 day period to pick up a deal and look at it. So it just comes down to matching the client to the right lender. And if the finance has to get approved within 2 weeks because the client's going to lose that block, it's not going to ANZ to save $20 a month on your repayments. It's securing that land. And that's the objective.
You can refinance in 2 years.
Yeah.
Some stage.
Yeah.
Mate, look, we've had an absolute ball having you on. We've absolutely talked about everything, including fishing and dress shopping and all sorts of stuff.
Haven't we?
Mate, before we let you go...
and there's one that I want to ask you as well.
Okay, you go first then.
Yep. I think this is a perfect timing asking this question as well for first home buyers out there that haven't bought a property yet, that are looking at different strategies, because they jump online and they see different ways to go about buying a home or investing. There's rent vesting models, there's buying your first home, townhouse, unit, house and land. But just for the first home buyer that's looking to purchase and they're looking at this rent vesting model, I know it works down south because you want to live in the area that you can't afford to buy because it's a couple of $1 million. But in somewhere like Southeast Queensland, for what you can purchase here, you can rent for as well. Like I know in Ashmore, where I was living for $650, I was paying rent. I can buy the same place, if not better, for $650 a week in repayments.
Exactly.
So what's the best strategy that you've found for your clients that are first home buyers, saving a deposit?
Yeah.
What do you normally recommend to them as a stepping stone, as in buying an investment property first, using that as leverage to then buy the home that they want? And I know it comes down to their personal strategy, but what have you seen best for them making that decision?
The grants right now and the opportunities are huge for first home buyers. There's up to $70,000 up for grabs.
Yep.
You have a look at the 25K home builder. You have a look at the 15K first home buyers grant right now. There's 40K. You have a look at the first home loan scheme where the banks are now offering no LMI.
People have forgotten about that, but it's
up
still
to 95%.
Still there.
Yeah. There's new openings coming 1st of July. So anyone that wants to make the most of that needs to be looking at doing it. Now, but there's a saving of about $10,000, $15,000 to be had in lender's mortgage insurance.
Yep.
Then you've got stamp duty savings that you don't pay as a first home. You add all this up and you can quickly come up with $70,000 in incentives and savings right now to get into your first home than you otherwise wouldn't get.
Correct. And there's equity in your home, really.
Yeah.
That's right.
And what we're encouraging first home buyers to do is that's awesome. Grab it, get in the market, and it's not your forever home. Buy where it makes sense. Think like an investor, buy as a first home buyer. Go out, buy it because it stacks up, live in it, and then if your circumstances change and you want to upgrade down the track, that's okay. You know?
You've got the equity in the property that the government has given you.
You're not going to lose, are you?
You're not going to lose. How can you lose on that?
Exactly.
That's right. Especially if you're buying a good location.
That's it.
It makes a big difference.
That's the trick to it, you know? And it becomes then your stepping stone to be able to build that property portfolio and build your wealth and be able to look at your forever home down the track. But with these incentives and offers right now, you'd be crazy not to take it as a first home buyer.
And a lot of first home buyers say, I just need a little, a bit of time. I'm like, you don't have time.
No.
Unfortunately, you've got 6 months.
Exactly.
And now you're down to 5.
Exactly. And the longer you wait, the
land's
the
selling.
good stuff's selling so quickly.
And going up in price.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I know where I bought, they had 12 months worth of land to sell, and now that's all gone. They've now got a 6-month gap before they can bring in the new sales. So I know when my property comes up for rent, there's not much more to come up.
Beautiful.
So it's perfect timing for me. I think they don't. If they're in the right position to buy, they just need to buy the property in a good location, a good home, a good builder.
Yeah.
Still the right steps and the right team.
Spot on.
But it's perfect time to buy.
Buy your first home, but think like an investor. Don't be emotional. Look through the facts. Make the sacrifice. It might not be living by the river and on the Gold Coast. It might be living out in the suburbs, but buying something that makes sense financially. And then, boom, set yourself up.
Short-term sacrifice.
Yeah. It's only 10 minutes away. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anywhere around here.
Yeah.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. For everyone watching again, it's David Shahidi from Real Estate Investment Finance. Him and his team are more than well-versed to assist with anything property and finance related, or if you just want to have a chat to them about overall planning and strategy, about where to go. You may not be looking to buy right now, but have a chat to them just to get a bit of an idea on where you want to be, because them and their team can give you a plan over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, as he mentioned. David, thank you so much for coming on, mate. How do people get in contact with you should they want to have a chat to you and your team?
Yep. www.realestateinvestmentfinance.com.au, or you can check us out there, Facebook, Real Estate Investment Finance. We're on all the social media platforms as well. LinkedIn, Facebook,
perfect,
Snapchat, TikTok's probably the next one to get on.
And so you TikTok, what do you mean? Get off me back.
And someone lives in a state, they can just jump on Zoom and have a strategy session with you, and you can give them that outcome.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yep. Doing heaps of that at the moment. So yep.
Awesome, David, mate. Thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for watching everyone at home. See you later.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.